No, when I was a kid on Saturdays, my parents would usually in the morning. That was when they would go out on Saturday morning and run errands, and they would leave us boys at home alone. And when they left, there were some expectations. It was Saturday morning. Keep the house clean was kind of the main one. But they would leave and leave me and my two brothers at home. And Saturday morning, I would do what most kids my age would do at that time. Go grab some chips, some chocolate chip cookies, turn on the TV, plant myself on the floor, and watch cartoons. And time would just zoom by, and then I would hear that sound. The garage door opening. And you'd never seen us move so fast. The garage door opens and no way! And we're jumping all around trying to pick this up, put this together. We're supposed to, clean the house and all kind of stuff while they're gone. And we're just trying to put the house kind of back together because we knew when they walked in the door, they would have some expectation of what the house was going to look like. And it usually wasn't quite up to par because they had completely gotten absorbed into watching cartoons. And, they were expecting when they came back that, well, actually what would happen is we know what you did while we were gone because I see the house now. It was very obvious what we didn't do. It was very obvious what we did. And we're going to take a look in Luke chapter 12. That's kind of what Jesus dealt with. Much more significant consequences, but it was that, surprise, the garage door is opening. And in Luke chapter 12, Jesus, and we're going to end up reading from verse 35, but Jesus, basically he says to the disciples, one day the master is going to return. The master leaves, he will return, and when he returns, the question won't be to his servants, did you believe in me? It's, what did you do while you were waiting for me to come back? And really I think there's few teachings of Jesus that can more shape our lives than what we're going to read today. So we're going to read from verse 35 all the way through verse 48. And the idea is, just like when my parents would leave on that Saturday morning, they were going to return and have some expectations. So let's pick it up in verse 35. Jesus says, be dressed, ready for service, and keep your lamps burning, like servants waiting for their master to return from a wedding banquet, so that when he comes and knocks, they can immediately open the door for him. It'll be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when he comes. Truly, I tell you, he'll dress himself to serve. We'll have them recline at the table and come and wait on him. It'll be good for those servants whose master finds them ready, even if he comes in the middle of the night or towards daybreak. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he wouldn't have let his house be broken into. You also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you don't expect him. Peter asked, Lord, are you telling this parable to us or to everyone? The Lord answered, who then is the faithful and wise manager whom the master puts in charge of his servants to give them their food allowance at the proper time? It'll be good for that servant who the master finds doing so when he returns. Truly, I tell you, he'll put him in charge of all his possessions. But suppose the servant says to himself, my master's taking a long time in coming. And then he begins to beat the other servants, both men and women, and to eat and drink and get drunk. The master of that servant will come at a day when he doesn't expect him, at an hour he's not aware of, and he'll cut him to pieces and assign him a place with the unbelievers. The servant who knows the master's will and does not get ready, or does not do what the master warns, will be beaten with many blows. But the one who does not know and does things deserving punishment will be beaten with few blows. From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. There's a lot in Jesus' teaching here. But Jesus gives us kind of three pictures and kind of three ideas of what life will be like when you're waiting for him to return. And I want to couch this in what we've been studying in Luke so far, because we're kind of picking it up in the middle of something. And in Luke chapter 9, verse 51, that was a very seminal point that we talked about a few months ago. It says that Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem. In Luke 9:51, it says he resolutely set out for Jerusalem. He set his face towards Jerusalem. So from that point all the way through chapter 19, where we are somewhat in the middle of that, it's what theologians call the travel narrative. Basically, it's the travel narrative because Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. So for these 9 chapters, Jesus is teaching his disciples very intentionally how they should live. Because he's going to the cross, and he knows his time is short. And in this particular passage in Luke chapter 12, it's not only how they should live, but it is how they should be ready when the master returns. And so, like the disciples then, Jesus was reminding them and reminding us that you're going to live in this kind of time in between. When I depart and when I return, that's where you are. And I want to show you how you need to live, how you wait for his return. And we're just like them. So, 3 things that we're going to pick out from today. 1, live ready. 2, live faithful. And 3, live with responsibility. And what I love about as we're walking through the Gospel of Luke is we're not handpicking. We're just walking through the Gospel, and whatever the Scripture has in store for us, we're going to, so to speak, eat from that meal today. We're not going to cut anything out and avoid anything that might feel a little difficult, or maybe that's not going to be encouraging. Well, actually, I think it is, but let's read through it. So, the first thing, it's 35 through 40, and we're not going to read all of that again, but that's what we're looking at right here. Basically, Jesus is saying, I will return, so live ready. Amen. Verse 35, he says, be dressed, ready for service, and keep your lamps burning. That's the way the NIV puts it. And you may have a different version that literally says, gird your loins. I understand why the NIV didn't say that. It says, be dressed and ready. But that's what gird your loins means. And so when they heard what Jesus was saying, gird your loins, it was, in ancient Jewish times and in the Greco-Roman world, they wore long robes, right? That was your normal attire, so to speak. But you didn't wear a long robe the way you would when you were going to be doing manual labor or getting ready for something or running. You would take that cloak and tuck it in your belt, cinch it up so that you could actually do the work and move. And so Jesus is saying, you need to be like that. You need to be ready to move. You're aware, you're not lounging and chilling. And that's when the robe was long and it wasn't cinched up, they weren't really doing much of anything other than a normal part of your day. But when it was time to move, in fact, Elijah, when he went on a really serious long run in the Old Testament, he did just that. He girded his loins, tucked the cloak in, and went for a long run. But that's what they were thinking when they heard Jesus say that. They recognized this is be ready for action. And then he says, and have your lamps already lit. So you're not scrambling when the door knocks. You've already got your lamps lit. You're prepared. You're awake. You're waiting. You're ready. Because he likens it to, in verse 36, like servants waiting for their master to return from a wedding banquet. So you're imagining, Jesus is saying, imagine that you are the servants and the master is at this wedding feast. Wedding feasts would last days, right? Not just a few hours, but it would last a day, 3 days, more like a week. And so the servants had no idea, really, when the master would return. So Jesus is saying, you need to be ready with your lamps burning just like that. Even, he says, if you come at the late at night or early in the morning. And some of your versions might say at the second watch or third watch of the night. Because that's literally what Jesus is saying. He says the master may return at the second watch or third watch. In Rome, there were 3 watches, which watch means literally someone was watching and protecting and being aware in case enemies were to come. So there's 4 watches. The second watch was from 9 to 12 at night. The third watch is from midnight to 3 a.m. So Jesus he's not, 6 to 9, the first watch, everybody's awake. Even an old guy like me usually makes it till 9 p.m. But once you get to 9 p.m. to 12 or 12 to 3, it would be normal for servants to be asleep. But Jesus is saying, no. You need to be awake and ready and alert, even in the second watch or the third watch. That's kind of abnormal to be awake and watching at that time. But that's what Jesus was saying. Even when servants would normally be asleep, and alertness is most difficult at that time. Jesus is kind of describing the challenge of discipleship. When you first became a Christian, first week, first month, first year, there are challenges, right? No matter what. Satan wants to take us out early on, late on. But to be honest, that first year or few, that's not the greatest challenge of our discipleship. It's 10 years out, 20 years out, 30 years out, when we can tend to chill, relax, not be so ready. That's the challenge. It's harder to be alert sometimes the longer we're disciples. And so Jesus is asking us, the question is are we spiritually dressed for action? Or would we be scrambling if Jesus came back? Like I did on Saturday mornings and heard that garage door open. But if Jesus were to come back tonight, oh wait, I am not ready. Not tonight, Jesus. Give me a little bit. But that's what he's saying. Are we dressed and ready for action? Are our lamps lit? What are you doing to stay ready? There is a blessing of getting older, because I recognize more and more, although I've always had a mortality, but I feel it and recognize it the older I get. I feel closer to the end line. Oh, it's smiling. I feel closer. Now, I may have been just as close when I was 25. I had no idea when Jesus would come back or when I might die. So it's important whether you're 25 or 85. What are you doing to be ready? Because he is coming. That's one of the main messages here. The master will return. So what are you doing to stay ready? I think as a congregation, one of the things that we're doing, and I pray that every single one of us are, is we are getting ready by being very prayerful, constantly in prayer, constantly communing with God. That prepares our hearts. It keeps our mind on what's eternal, not on what's temporary. The more we pray, the more we get perspective on life, and we remember our mortality. And I'd say nothing has changed me more this last year. We spent some time yesterday with a number of us got together and kind of had our workshop, and we looked back at 2025. There's been nothing in 2025 that's changed me more than prayer. And I hope that's the same for you. What are you doing to be ready? If not, if you're not alert, you're going to get blindsided. Jesus will come back, or you'll die. You'll get blindsided if you're not ready. And if you've watched football and seen some blindside hits, they're kind of funny to watch, but I highly doubt they're funny to be involved in. You don't want to be blindsided. Jesus says, live ready. And I'm thinking, Jesus is like, even if it's the second or third watch, like, really, Jesus? Is that kind of an unreal expectation? I mean, those servants got to get some sleep, right? Obviously, he's speaking metaphorically, but he's saying, even when it's difficult, is what he's saying. Even when the world would say, you should be asleep, you should be taking care. You need to be alert and ready. And I'm like, Jesus, always be ready? I mean, I got a life. Always be ready? I got stuff to do. Why wouldn't the disciples just have responded with, come on, Jesus. I've got responsibilities. I've got a life. I've got a wife. I've got kids. I've got a job. You really expect me to be always ready? A couple weeks ago, my daughter, Lauren, and her husband, Mesa, probably about 4 weeks ago, whatever, sent me the text of, here's the flight that we're arriving. As soon as I got that text, I opened up my phone and put it, boom, it's in there. I know exactly when they're coming. And then, on top of that, the hour before that, I graded out travel. So I'm going to be ready to travel so that I am there on time and early when they get there. And the closer it came, I wasn't surprised. Like, oh, not yet. Okay, all right. It's only 10 in the morning. They're not here yet. Come on, they're not getting here till 6:15. Okay, do something, get things done. Whatever. Is it time yet? Is it time yet? The car had gas. Cleaned out the trunk. There was room for their suitcases. Man, I was early. They didn't have to wait. Dad, where are you at? I was waiting. I was fired up. I was ready. My lamp was burning. I mean, that's what you do when you're excited about someone. You're in the living room and you keep looking out looking through the curtain. Are they here yet? Man, I thought that was them. That was just somebody driving by. When you're excited, that's what you do. And so I wonder sometimes if we lose perspective, we're just not that excited about his return because it seems so far off, or Satan dupes us. But there's something beautiful what Jesus says. When he's talking about them waiting for the master to return, it says in verse 37, the second part, well, it will be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when he comes. It'll be good. Other verse, blessed. Blessed, like the Beatitudes. Blessed are those who the master finds them ready when he comes. Now those are the people in a good spot. Those are the ones that are truly blessed. They've got it good. Why? Truly, I tell you, The master will dress himself to serve. The master, when he comes home from the banquet and they are ready, the lights are on, they're dressed, they immediately open the door, they greet, there's this warm embrace, and then he says, recline at the table. I'm going to prepare a feast for you guys. The master will dress himself to serve. Actually, and the translation is basically Jesus will gird himself to serve. Isn't that a little upside down? Since when do servants or masters serve the servants? That's what servants are. Does that surprise you? The master is Jesus. We know that, right? So the master is going to serve. Didn't Jesus say to his disciples, he says, don't let your hearts be troubled. I'm going there to prepare a place for you. Jesus himself was leaving to go get a place ready for us. Preparing. Servants prepare stuff. Jesus left earth, went to heaven, and has been busy preparing a place for you and I to spend eternity. Shouldn't wait, Jesus, we're the ones. You sit, we bow. Jesus dresses himself to serve. And isn't that what Peter kind of got offended at one point? Remember the Last Supper? They sit down and Jesus puts a towel around his waist. He girded his loins. He dressed himself as one who serves. And he washed their feet. And Peter said, no, not my feet. This is offensive. You're the Lord. But that's our God. It's an upside down kingdom, right? That God would serve us. Jesus served the disciples. And Jesus says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So God is a servant? That makes no sense, right? On one hand, it makes no sense. But that's God. Jesus, I know Moses was the most humble man on the face of the earth, but do you think Jesus topped that? I think so, by a long shot. Does that mean God is humble? The master is coming, so live ready. And what a master we have to get ready for. Verses 41 to 46, Jesus teaches us to live faithful. Not just live ready, but live faithful. Interesting, in verse 41, after Jesus shares these things, Peter asked, Lord, are you telling this parable to us? Or is this kind of like a general thing? You kind of get, it's like, why would Peter ask that? Well, I don't know. I kind of think he's like, it's kind of serious here, Jesus. You're like, we need to like be ready at a moment's notice. Be prepared. And is this like to us or just a general thing? Peter felt the weight of what Jesus was saying. And we should too. So easy to think we have forever. And we don't know. One, we don't know when Jesus will return. I never believe it's going to happen in my lifetime. Any of you like convinced it's going to happen in your lifetime? Maybe you are. But I just never really think that's going to happen. I mean, come on. It's been 2,000 years. Why is it going to come in the next 30 if I make it that long? But I also think I'm probably not going to die till I'm at least 80, maybe 90. Maybe I even can make it in my mid-90s. But you know what I'm saying? Don't you just naturally think you're the one that's going to die old? We don't know that. So Jesus says, live faithful. But Jesus responds to Peter's question of, is this for us or just anybody? And he says, well, who then is the faithful and wise manager? So I love it when Jesus doesn't really answer the question, just asks another question, makes you think. The household manager was entrusted with some significant responsibility. He's entrusted with all the other servants. So he's a servant, yes, he's maybe an employee, and now he's entrusted with the whole household. And so, well, the challenge comes at this point. So he's put in charge of the household. And then in verse 45 says, but suppose the servant, which is the household manager, because he's still a servant, but now he's got more responsibility. He says, suppose the servant says to himself, my master's taking a coming. That is when the danger was present, and that's when things began to deteriorate. When? When he thought, he's not going to be back for quite a while. I got lots of time. He's gone away on this long trip, so I've got time. And that's the danger, is when we just go from day to day to day and continue to think we have forever. I'll never forget the day that I got the call that my father died. I know exactly where I was, at Optimal Home Care, at which meeting room I was in, where my phone was lying, and who was sitting in that room when I got the call that my dad had just died. That'll be me one day. And it never happens when you think it will. It's always too early, and a lot of us have experienced that. But the delay for this household manager revealed his heart. And sometimes it's when we're in wait that reveals the heart. It's not like this guy really rejected the master. He just lived as if the master wasn't coming back for a long time. His thinking changed, and then his behavior changed. And so for us, if we don't understand the reality that the spiritual is greater than the physical, that there is a spiritual reality, a spiritual war, and there is a spiritual timeline, that it's appointed for each of us to die, or Jesus is coming back, then our behavior won't align, because we're not thinking spiritually like this man wasn't. And I want to at least just touch on this part in verse 46, where it says that the master, if he comes home and the guy's not ready, what's he going to do? He will cut him to pieces and assign him a place with the unbelievers. I'm like, ooh, that feels a little severe. Cut him in pieces and assign him with unbelievers. It's like, wow, is God that mean? Well, it's really kind of idiomatic language. It's not that he's going to like chop him in 50 pieces. It's basically cut him in two, but it'll be this separation. He'll be separated from believers. He'll be put with unbelievers. That's the point of Jesus saying. He's not trying to teach us about corporal punishment. He's saying there will be separation. The ultimate, what Jesus is teaching here is that there will be separation for that person, separated from God, from believers. I remember when thinking of living faithful, my parents had decided, I think I was in high school, And my parents had decided to go away for the weekend, get a little marriage time, so they're gone like Friday through Monday. And then my brother and I went to spend the night at some friend's house. And then I found out this later, next week. We all found out later. While we were gone, my stepsister, was like, and she was 2 years younger than me. I think I was a junior, or I was a senior in high school. And parents are gone, the boys are gone. So she's like, we're going to have a party. And so in our house, evidently, there was a lot of high school friends in our house that weekend while we were gone, and there was quite a party that happened there. A lot of drinking and all kinds of stuff. And when my parents came home, and somehow they always find out really good at cleaning up the evidence very well. But that's what happens if we're not aware and thinking, then our behavior will change. We're like, he's not coming for a long time. And so then we begin to kind of do our own thing. When no one's watching, who do you become? When no one's watching, how's your purity? When no one's watching, it's just you. How's your purity? How's your purity of heart? How about our marriages? How are we treating our spouses when we're not with the family? When it's on a Friday night or a Tuesday morning? We're at home. How do we speak to one another in those times? When no one's watching and you're on the job, there's no disciples there, it's just you. Or you're at the gym, or you're on I-40 in the morning at 8 something or 5 something. No one's watching. What are we like? How's our stewardship? No one knows about our stewardship, really. It's our money. We take care of it. We spend it how we wish. But is the reality of Jesus coming back and Him being aware of how we live our lives, is that impacting our stewardship? I think, as Peter asked, does this apply to everyone or just us? There is an extra level of responsibility for leaders. And Peter recognized that. So whether as an elder, as a core team member here, as a family group leader, a ministry leader, are we caring for others or really looking for self first? That's what they were struggling. That's what this guy struggled with. He left and he began like, well, I'm not beating the servants, but he was mistreating the servants and he was overindulging himself and eating, and it was like, this is sweet. I'm loving this. I don't have responsibility. He wasn't following through on his responsibilities. He wasn't treating his coworkers well, and he was just living for pleasure and comfort. That can happen for us. Maybe not as drastically as that, but that's what Jesus is saying, especially as leaders. Are we taking care of others or just ourselves? Are our needs most pressing or others? How we live matters to Jesus. He cares how we live. The Master is coming, so live faithfully. Then in verse 47, he teaches us to live responsibly. He says, the servant who knows his master's will and doesn't get ready or doesn't do what the master wants will be beaten with many blows. This is really the weight of the whole passage. Is the servant who knows his master's will but doesn't, here's what it's going to be like. This servant knows but doesn't get ready. And then he says there's going to be this many blows. It's another part of the passage is like, I don't like Jesus' language here. Many blows, few blows, cut into pieces. It's tough imagery for us. But servants in the ancient world, there was corporal punishment. That's what happened. And so Jesus was being very frank. But the point of this is not, again, about corporal punishment, but about responsibility. That Jesus gives us responsibility while he is away. And Jesus is saying there is a proportional responsibility too. Everyone's responsible, but to whom much has been given, much will be demanded. Are we the people whom much has been given? I think so. Have you been given much spiritually? I think about in my life, and sometimes I'm sure you do the same. You just step back and you pray and you walk through how God has pursued you, been patient, provided, right? You just kind of walk through the different places in your life. And I think about, wow, for me, I learned about Jesus from day zero. Many of you heard about Jesus really early on. I've been given a lot because of that. I was raised to believe in God. Wasn't really taught what it was to be a disciple yet, but I was taught to believe in God and read my Bible. I'm grateful for that. But you and I as well. Have you not been mentored a lot in your life spiritually? Think about that. How many mentors have you had? How many disciplers or mentors have you had in your life as a Christian? It's amazing, isn't it? How many different people have been in our lives? To whom much has been given, much will be demanded. I dare say there's not anyone in here who wouldn't qualify as much has been given. We're not like, as a church, we're not uninformed. How many sermons do you think, and maybe if you're younger, not quite as many, but even the young among us, if you've been here, a part of the church here for a year, think of how many sermons you've heard in a year. I mean, how many times you've read your Bible in a year? How many family groups you've attended? How many mentoring or discipling times? Then if you've been a disciple 10, 20, 30 years, oh my goodness. How many times have we heard the gospel message and the teachings? And how much grace have I received over the years? How much forgiveness? How much mercy? How many times has God pursued me? Do you feel pursued by God? Do you ever feel pursued by God when you're like going your own way? And you know what happens? Your conscience first, right? You feeling it? Whatever the sin or weakness or direction you're going, your conscience. God's speaking through your conscience. And then he continues to pursue. He might do it more directly with, like you're having a conversation and you're not ready to walk in the light yet. You're not ready to really be humble and be open, but you're talking with a brother or sister and somehow exactly what they say speaks to your situation and you're like, do they know what's going on in my life? That's God pursuing. To whom much has been given. And just like with the servants here, the question wasn't, did they know everything? It was, what are you doing with what you already know? Are you and I acting on what we already understand? We don't know everything. We're continuing to grow, continuing to learn. But are we acting on what we understand? We know I should walk in the light. I should be honest. I should be humble. I should be open. I know I should be a serving part of the body. Am I holding back in serving? I know I should use my home as a place of hospitality and a place for my neighbors to know. I know I should share the hope that I have. It's not just, I should share my faith. I know I should evangelize. That's so topical. That's so superficial. What we should be doing is sharing the hope that we have. I don't know about you, but I woke up this morning by the grace of God. My name's written in the book of life, and if I die today, I'm going to heaven. I have hope. And things aren't all rosy in every area, and they aren't for you either. But we wake up by the grace of God with the forgiveness of sins and being chosen by God. Are we sharing that? Not am I evangelizing? Am I inviting someone to church? That's so superficial. Are we loving our neighbors and giving them the hope that we have? Are we living up to what we have been given? What step of faith do you already know and understand but haven't yet taken? What conversation are you avoiding? What change has the Spirit been convicting and bringing to your spirit that you've been delaying? Not yet. Soon. The Master is coming. So live responsibly with what we've been given. If the Master, Jesus, stepped into your life this week on Tuesday, what would he find? Would he find someone ready, awake, alert, excited? We can't control when he returns, but we can decide how we live until he returns. And why be ready? Why be faithful? Why be responsible? The point isn't here that we should be terrified. When is he coming? I mean, that's kind of how I felt when the garage door went open, okay? It was like, I'm going to be in trouble. That's what I thought, and rightly so. House is kind of messy and whatever. But that's what Jesus is teaching. You need to be like on your P's and Q's and be always like afraid of when's he coming back. That's not the way you feel when you're going to the airport, picking up someone you can't wait to see. You're not like, uh-oh, when are they going to get here? No, when are they going to get here? I can't wait to, are they here? That's what Jesus is talking about. That's why we should be ready. That's why we should gird our loins and be ready to move at any moment. Why we should have our lamps burning even at 9 to midnight and 12 to 3, because he might be coming back. Yes. Paul said in Philippians 1:23, let me just read this to you. You're familiar with it. He said, "For me to live is Christ, to die is gain. If I'm to go on living in the body, this will mean fruitful labor for me. What shall I choose? I don't know. I'm torn between the two. I desire to depart and be with Christ, which is better by far." Man, what shall I choose? To depart and be with Christ, he says, is far superior. It's way better than staying here. Dude, you're in a cult. You want to die? But isn't that the way true disciples of Jesus, who love him and know how loved they are, want to go be with him? That it's better by far. I think when in my life, when it's not better by far, I think I've grown distant. I don't realize who he is. I don't recognize his greatness. And you think, yeah, but Dan, that doesn't make sense. If you got a wife and you have kids, you couldn't. God's not calling us to live with suicidal tendencies, but He is saying it's better by far. There's nothing. Isn't that what Asaph said? He said, there's nothing in heaven I desire, and being on earth has nothing I have except you. Heaven has nothing I desire but you, and the same thing with earth. When we continue, we grow in our love and our relationship with God, we'll want Him to come back. We'll be excited for that. This is not about being afraid of God. It's about our love and our relationship with Him. Our Lord, our King, and the one who will serve us is the one who's returning. So live ready, live faithful, and responsible. Amen.